Well, I want to welcome everybody to Engaging Individual Donors. I think you're all very brave to come to this session. I was afraid everybody'd be at another session. We are being live streamed right now, so we'll be taking information and feedback at the end of this presentation using our online platform. And just open your browser and type in cff.cnf.io. That's cff.cnf.io. And then click on Engaging Individual Donors and you'll be able to interact with us. So it's wonderful to be here with you. I'm Gina Shuey. I'm the Vice President of Individual Giving. And we are here to talk about how volunteers and staff can work together to impassion donors and inform them about multiple giving opportunities. This is part of the Foundation's wildly important goals to give greater voice to the CF community in all we do. And in this instance, it's around individual giving. Today, you're going to hear from National Leadership Council volunteers who agreed to join the Individual Giving Subcommittee a year ago. In doing so, they each developed their own voice and approach to the areas of individual giving that most appealed to them. And boy, they have had a big impact. I'm so excited. This group, they took on areas that meant something to them, and they really led the charge and helped others to grow. They also developed an individual giving shared job description, and they have helped educate others on best fundraising practices. So next year, or this year, the group is going to be mentoring. They want to mentor other volunteers in the chapter who would like to take a role in individual giving. And so we are a resource to you. Before you hear from your colleagues, I want to explain the elements of the individual giving programs, which encompass maybe more than you think. Individual gifts come from individuals and family foundations. They are meant as an alternative or an additive gift to special events. They give us more choices on how we want to support the CF Foundation. And they are opportunities at all giving levels. Individual giving is not just about $1,000,000 donors. It's about all of us. So there are 4 types of individual giving programs. Major gifts, which is $10,000 or more given over 1 to 5 years. Annual fund gifts of $10,000 or less given in 1 year. And then plan gifts, which are gifts from your will or estate, also called legacy giving. And direct mail solicitations, which come out of the national office. How the CF Foundation approaches individual giving has changed quite a bit in the recent years. Our major goal, one that is strongly promoted by Preston Campbell, is stewardship. By this, I mean keeping donors informed and engaged with the CF Foundation's programs and services. By doing so, we have an opportunity to instill a lifelong passion of support for the cure while also improving lives today. This means showing appreciation for past donors who got us where we are now and informing new donors about the Foundation's mission and community. I firmly believe that if you steward donors in a manner that is meaningful to them, they will let you know how and when they would like to support the Foundation. And this is what happened among the members of our individual giving subcommittee, as you will hear shortly. We provided support and education so that each of them could impact an area of individual giving that was so important to them. Going hand in hand with stewardship is education, including some targeted giving areas that we are trying to keep our constituents informed about, such as our Nonsense and Rare Mutations Initiative, our lung transplant initiative, and also equipment for the lab. Here, with the lung transplant, there is no fundraising component. It is simply sharing information with people who are most concerned about this area. So if you steward and you educate, I believe you will grow revenues. And we have done this now for the last 15 years in the individual giving department. We know that asking for gifts is not easy, whether it is through a passion fundraising page, a research campaign, or an annual fund monthly giving program. Every time you ask for support, you're putting yourself on the line. And this is hard. We understand that. But please know you're not alone. We want you to share your personal story of passion and commitment. And we are going to support you. Your fellow board members will support you, the chapter staff, the individual giving officers, and the members of this subcommittee. They are all here to help you strategize and tell the story. I wanted to show a picture of our team of individual giving officers who want nothing more than to help you engage other volunteers with our programs and services. They are all listed in your handouts, and we have indicated which chapters they are working with. All of them are passionate, dedicated, and care immensely about all of you. And I have to say, I am so proud to have led this team for the last 6 years. And now I want to introduce to you one of the most passionate supporters of the CF Foundation, Paul Matenko. Paul is an expert fundraiser. Not only can he inspire the outer circle to join our cause, but he consistently looks to match giving opportunities that appeal to certain donors. So Paul, we want to thank you for your leadership, particularly on this council. We kind of swam upstream to get here, and yet it was a remarkable experience. Thank you for making a difference. So Paul Matenko.
Hi. Who is that young man up there? I don't, you're not supposed to laugh at that. You're supposed to say that's you. Anyway, it's great to see all the people here, and we've got members of our individual giving subcommittee. And the whole purpose of these committees, we've got the 4 different committees, is to an effort by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation to engage volunteers more in the strategy and the planning in these very important areas. And it's really a shift in focus from foundation-centric to volunteer-centric, and it's something very exciting, and I hope you guys all appreciate it and want to become a part of that. It's great to see so many people here in the individual giving session, and I hope you all are encouraged to join our effort. Our objective, today at this session is to encourage you, to teach you about individual giving, to encourage you to be part of it, to give you some strategies on how we can raise gifts in all the different categories, and to let you know that the members of the committee, the ones that are both here and the ones that aren't here, are a resource to you in your chapters as you continue with these efforts. We're here to help. We're here to make your jobs easier, and together to have a much more robust individual giving effort these coming years. And we're going to have a little panel discussion, and Amy Meinrich, my partner in crime here, will be the moderator. So we're going to all answer a few questions from Amy.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you all so much for joining us in this session, whether you're on the web or joining us in this room. Thank you for your interest in individual giving. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today who we'll be talking with. Starting from my very far right, we have Mark Malinsky. Mark is a board member of the Texas Gulf Coast chapter, so he didn't travel far to get here. And professionally, Mark is the executive vice president and CFO of Petro Edge. And to his left, or your right, is Tom Foster. Tom is the board president of our Indiana chapter. He is also professionally the associate VP of wealth management at Morgan Stanley. And next to Tom is Aaron Shanahan. Erin is from our Greater Illinois chapter. She is a mother of 2, and she is the chair of the annual fund in the Greater Illinois chapter, and also the newly named co-chair of our national annual fund campaign. And of course, you already met Paul. Paul is our Orange County chapter board president, and he is also the CEO of Stacked Restaurants. So it's my honor to be talking with our panelists today. And our panelists join me to share their stories of how they're involved in individual giving. And we hope these stories inspire you to get more involved. Our individual giving committee contact information is listed in your packets. Please view these volunteers as resources. Ask them questions, reach out to them. They're here as peer-to-peer volunteer mentors. Gina told you why individual giving is so important to our foundation and what our goals are moving forward. And our panelists today are going to give you ideas on how volunteers can put ideas into action. So everyone's approach to individual giving will look a little bit different depending on your wherewithal and comfort levels. So we don't expect all of you to take the same paths as these panelists, but we hope it inspires some ideas. So let's start off with Mark. Mark, help me understand your connection to CF, as well as the foundation and your involvement in the Texas Gulf Coast chapter.
Well, you could say that I married into CF. I didn't know much about the disease, and 40 years ago, I met my wife's family, and my niece, Janet, had CF. And so over the years, she and I developed a very close and unique relationship. And when you have a family member that you love who needs help, it's amazing what you can do and what you're capable of doing. After developing a relationship with Sissy Boyd, the ED of the Gulf Coast chapter, she asked me to join the board, and I've served as president for 3 years and have been involved in a number of different events. She asked me to get involved in a struggling annual fund campaign. And I thought I could make a difference, and so that's how I ended up involved in annual fund.
So can you tell me a little bit more about how you and Sissy worked together to build a pipeline and what you started with the annual fund and where you took it to?
Sure. How you approach your relationship with potential donors is just as important as securing the gift. With an annual fund, it's all about the relationship. We don't just ask people, we engage with them, try to educate them a lot more about what CF is all about, and build a relationship. An example of that is, I guess it's 2 years ago now, we started a new event. It's called Breakfast with the Gorillas, and it reaches out to a community that has not had any exposure to CF. And these are up-and-coming families, and we get them involved early, educate them about CF. This event itself isn't about raising a whole lot of money. It doesn't. It's about planting the seeds and engaging people. In terms of annual fund, it got off to a shaky start. But from my past experience, I realized that a matching gift was critical, so my wife and I agreed to a $5,000 match, and we had a great response. And then the Marlin Oil match came about, so we agreed to increase our match to $10,000, and we were lucky enough to get a substantial addition the first year from the Marlin Oil match, and then last year again we were able to raise another $16,000 through the Marlin Oil match.
Mark, thank you for sharing your story with us and for taking a personal approach to how you have raised money for annual fund. And now we're going to move on to Tom. Tom, you're one of our newest members of our individual giving committee, and you're a very special volunteer because you have no direct connection or relationship to someone with CF. Can you share your story about how you became involved with the foundation and individual giving?
Oh, you're right. I don't have anyone in my family who has been affected by CF. In 1983, my daughter was born in a small, In 1983, my daughter was born in a small rural hospital in northern Indiana. She was 4.5 weeks early. She weighed 5 pounds, 4.5 ounces. I knew from the beginning we were going to have difficulties. She struggled to live. You know, those were some really dark days for me. After about 18 months, I could finally see daylight. And I think of the parents that bring home their children into the world with no idea they have CF, and then, or the challenges that they face. I think of the feelings I had during the dark days, and I wonder if that's how the parents feel every day. My initial involvement with the foundation was much like a lot of people, through events. In fact, my wife purchased me at a gala, so 10 years ago. I was introduced to the board and then to the annual fund, and it was something that it was a new initiative for the foundation, and it was something I could really relate to. It's something you can invite people to be a part of on an ongoing basis and have the potential to grow. This transition out of events, and it's something that we do quite well in terms of the events, really appealed to me after orienting myself to the annual fund. I quickly learned about the planned giving program. Given my line of work as a financial advisor, planned giving really made sense for me to be involved with. The foundation planned giving program is so important as we don't know how far off in the future the cure is, but a planned gift gives us a reliable stream of income and a way to ensure that we will get to the cure.
That's right. And you've been involved in the Indiana chapter board for just over a year now. Right. And with the individual giving committee, can you talk to us about how you've taken what you've learned with the committee and applied them at the local level?
Well, something I felt very strong about since I started with the foundation is that we need to have a better communication with our community in terms of different methods of giving outside of the events. One of the initiatives of the National Leadership Council is to revamp the chapter board structures and be a part of that, so we'll include an individual giving chair, which I think is a great addition. Our group helped develop the individual giving chair job description as a part of the role. We will regularly educate and communicate the annual fund and major gift and planned giving initiatives to the board, and then disseminate to the broader community. There are so many things going on in individual giving, from exciting new campaigns to targeted individual giving and matches. There's so much we can share that people aren't aware of, and this is such an important revenue stream to the foundation, and I can't wait to see this in our chapter. On a more personal note, individual giving may be intimidating at first, but I remember that when my wife and I made our plans in our state planning, it felt really good to include the foundation in that. And sometimes it may seem scary to ask someone for their support, but I remember the feeling that we had once we had completed that. And it can be very rewarding to give someone else that feeling as well.
I agree. Making the ask can seem daunting. I mean, it's daunting to me, and it's my profession. But when you phrase it like that, Tom, it could be a very rewarding experience to the person being asked. So, Aaron, you are our annual fund guru. How did you find yourself working with Annual Fund, and what are some of the initiatives with Annual Fund that you're implementing in Chicago?
Sure. Well, I'm always looking for new ways to help the foundation, and after getting sick of me asking, our local chapter, Greater Illinois, suggested that I come on as the co-chair of Annual Fund last year. While the other events in the foundation get a lot of the attention, and it's because they raise the most money, it really seemed like Annual Fund was kind of this unsung hero. It seemed like there was so much potential for it to raise a lot more money without spending a huge amount of time or money to get there. And I also really like a challenge. Last year in Illinois, we were successful in growing our chapter's annual fund by around 40%, or $115,000. To get to that point, we really focused on three things. First, like Mark, we had two other matches locally besides the national match, one that my family gave, and then a combined gift from two donors that Amanda Czar and Cheryl Sunheim put together. And they were both so successful that it looks like we will repeat those again in 2017. Then, with the new ability of chapters to pull their own lapsed donor lists, We work to personally contact each and every lapsed donor to the annual fund to ask them to donate a specific gift amount. I also helped a few other chapters with their lapsed lists this year, and just based on some personal correspondence I had with those donors, I had one donor who last gave a donation of $100 in 2012, gave $250 last year. And then I had another donor who had gone from making a $100 donation in 2014 to a $2,500 donation last year with no giving in between, just because I asked him to. Sometimes all you have to do to get the donation is ask. Finally, I spent a lot of time writing handwritten personal thank you notes to every single annual fund donor in Illinois last year. Since we know stewardship is so important, reaching out personally to just say thank you can make a big difference for a donor to feel valued.
And I love that you and Mark both targeted donors with specific asks and were very successful. So tell me more about your stewardship efforts and why it's so important in the individual giving process. And I also know that you and your husband Joel made a major gift recently. Can you tell me a little bit about what prompted that as well?
Sure. It's really two separate things. First, with stewardship, it's so important to the fundraising process. You do not want your donors to only hear from you when you want them to give more money. Eventually, they will stop giving, and they probably won't even answer the phone when you call. We all have call screening now. We can just decline that phone call. We have to steward, educate, and always make sure that donors feel appreciated and know that they are making a real difference for the foundation. Again, a really easy way to steward volunteers is to just say thank you without asking them to make another donation at the same time. If you're feeling intimidated by being involved with individual giving, a really easy way is to offer to write a thank you note for your chapter. They would go over so well. You can make a phone call if you have it. Just tell them your connection to CF and thank them so much for making a difference in your life. Another way to make donors feel valued is to make sure that the donors receive information on what their money is going toward, what new drugs are coming, what new research is being done. All of us here are really in the know on this stuff, but so many of our donors don't get to come to VLC. They don't get to go to any other conference. They don't necessarily hear this. And so just reminding them about what their money is being used for and what kind of research is being done is such a huge way to remind them that we're here and that we appreciate them. And in terms of major giving, when our son, Aiden, who is 5.5, was diagnosed with CF, my husband Joel and I made it our mission to help cure this disease. Besides volunteering in a bunch of different capacities, we also make our own personal donation to the foundation every year. Last year, though, it came to our attention that if we gave a little bit more and gave a gift of at least $10,000 spread out over 3 to 5 years, we could earmark that for nonsense mutations. Our son is homozygous W1282X. He's in that last 5%. So the more we can push into that part of the pipeline, the more we're going to do that. And so telling your donors that they can maybe stretch a little bit and make a real difference in an area that really concerns them, transplant, nonsense mutation, Compass, eventually the Boston lab will be part of it, can make a big difference. It's also a great way to approach annual fund donors who might be giving at a slightly higher rate every year, maybe $1,000 to $2,000. If there's something that's meaningful to them, you can maybe ask them to stretch a little bit and turn it into a major gift. And again, as a volunteer, if you're nervous to make that ask, just offer to go in a meeting with someone from your chapter and let them make the ask after you've told your story. That's their job. They are more than happy to make that ask for you, so you don't have to. But again, if you can connect with the donor personally, that'll make that ask so much more easy.
Thank you. As Erin points out, giving to individual gifts is often a way for donors to continue to deepen their connection to the foundation. And also, thank you for emphasizing the importance of stewardship in our fundraising efforts. Now we move on, last but not least, to Paul. Paul, you've been involved with Foundation for 30 years in a variety of capacities. How has being involved in individual giving rewarding for you and the Foundation?
Yeah, well, as Amy said, I have been involved for a long time. I've done a lot of things as you can see. I've always been looking for what can I do that would be most effective in raising money for cystic fibrosis. And I realized that event planning for fundraising events was not necessarily the best use of my efforts, although I get involved with that to some extent. But what I'm best at is telling the story of my daughter, telling the story about cystic fibrosis and the urgency to find a cure. And it seemed that individual giving really leads to that it's a personal one-on-one situation where you're telling your story, you're talking about the need for support, and then you have to, ask for support. And that's another thing that I've never been shy about, is just asking people to support. So it was something that really engaged me, was to be able to one-on-one talk to people and get them to understand the situation and to support the cause. But even within individual giving, there's different functions. Some people are connectors. They have a lot of connection with people who might be able to give. There are some people like myself who like to tell a story, get people, engaged in understanding the need. There's other people like Aaron who, is very involved with everything, but also stewardship of thanking the people who have given support. I think Aaron must have carpal tunnel syndrome. I cannot imagine thanking everyone in the entire state. That's incredible, but so important. But also, like Aaron, I have a very important reason to support individual giving, and that is that my daughter also has 2 nonsense mutations, and so I'm very involved with specific targeted giving towards the nonsense mutation initiative, and something I can be very passionate about and can convey that passion to people and hopefully get their support.
Yeah, and I'll vouch, I work directly with Paul on a regular basis, and he takes his passion for nonsense mutation and reaches out to volunteers and others across the country. I mean, not only throughout California, but across the country. So Paul, if you could leave with our fellow volunteers one last and final thought or tip about individual giving, what would it be?
Well, I think it's the thought process of fundraising events are really cultivation events, that we should use the opportunity to reach out to people who come to events to do more, because many of them can do more. It's all a matter of how much we ask of them. And what I encourage people in our chapter to do is reach out to the chairs of the fundraising committees, the event committees, find out who was at the event, and see if we can go further with them, tell the personal story, and try to get a gift from them. And maybe even more low-hanging fruit is people who have come to events over the years, but for whatever reason can't come to an event a particular year. They want to give. They just didn't have the opportunity to give that year. We can't let them get away without offering them that chance to give, and that's really very low-hanging fruit for annual fund especially.
And we've had some personal success with that in the recent in a recent event. So thank you, Paul, and thank you to all my panelists for sharing your stories of your unique approaches to individual giving. And we hope some of the ways that these folks are involved in individual giving resonates with you on a personal level to either take action or bring some ideas back to your chapters. And we know that a lot of what's said today might be forgotten, so we did a little cheat sheet for you of ways that you can incorporate individual giving into your chapter or your personal outreach. It's a timeline of actions. It's a list of actions as well as a timeline of when you can take them. And for those on the web, we also will be making this available for you. But next, we're going to transition into the breakout portion, which is what we're all here for you guys to share your ideas as a group of some of the ideas that our panelists spoke about that might spur some ideas in your personal lives or how you're involved with the foundation. And the purpose of these breakouts is for you to discuss amongst your peers some of the topics that we went over. You'll be given 15 minutes for the breakout group, and in front of you, you will see a list of questions to help guide your conversations. And we hope that, our panelists up here can join some of the tables. You will also see some facilitators, some individual giving officers sitting amongst you. So use them as resources to guide your discussions. And when we're finished with the 15 minutes, we hope that a representative from each market size will be able to share with us some ideas or aha moments or key takeaways or questions that you might have that you had while listening to the panelists or in your discussions. So, share. All right. Hope everybody had some good conversations. All right. Now we're going to share some ideas that you guys had in your groups. We would like to invite a volunteer from each market size to stand up and share some of your key takeaways, questions you might have had, ideas that came up, or maybe actions that you're going to take back to your local chapters based on some of the conversations that you had in your groups. So we're going to start off with Tier 1 market size. Is there anybody that would like to stand up and talk about something that they learned or an idea that they had that was spurred by our conversations? From Tier 1. Don't be shy.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emily. I'm from the Rocky Mountain chapter, specifically from Denver, Colorado. And we discussed a bunch of different things, but the one takeaway that I thought was really interesting for my generation of people and givers is that a donor that's my age that donates $25 now to an event can be turned into an annual giver as they progress through their career, and that as they progress, then maybe their donations can progress along with them. So it's kind of starting out, a little smaller, but just getting them engaged and turning them into lifelong donors.
Yeah, it's a continuum. Thank you. Is there anybody from a Tier 2 market size that would like to share an idea, or even a Tier 1?
Jen, yes. Hi. We had a great conversation. A couple things about keeping it local versus going national, and with a few EDs at the table, whether sending that individualized letter at the end of the year really brings in revenue. We talked about picking Harper, who's April's baby right here. She happens to be our child ambassador for 2017. We also add an adult ambassador. And then throughout the year, we send out different things, Harper's Easter egg hunting. And then, our adult is finishing her sophomore year in college and that kind of stuff. And then the last thing that we talked about is this new thing I'm obsessed with called Greetable. And it's a stewardship thing, hopefully. After we get a donation at a certain event in our chapter, we send them. And they're kind of like Birchbox, if any of the women have heard of those. It's just like a thank you version of that, and you can send just a thank you. You can add little gifts inside. They happen to have an essential oil that says breathe deeply. That's adorable. But anyway, for any kind of major gifts that we get, we do that now. And then anything that's over like $5,000 for individual giving, we send a smaller version of that.
Thank you. We love to see young ambassadors. Thank you. All right. Is there anybody from Tier 3? Bob.
Hi. I thought we had some good conversation. One of the last things we talked about was as we welcome new people into the individual giving circle, if you will, that we work with them to come up with an action plan. In other words, to look at some goals and how we're going to get there. We also had some feedback for national of hoping that across the country, establishing kind of a standard operating procedure for stewardship and thank yous, so that there's been times, and again, being one of the longest involved people here, there's been times where, as chapters have not always followed maybe thanking the way that it should happen, and so hopefully we can get that so that it's kind of standard that we're thanking our donors, because there's nothing more important than the stewardship. Aaron for writing the thank you notes. There is no better way to keep our circle engaged and to make a difference And then I think we like these kind of best practice guidelines and maybe even a little customizable. So as Jim was saying, each of us is different as to how we share our story, as to the type of situations we're in. And one last thing was the accomplishments of the foundation, maybe some bullet points for people to be able to have in their toolkit to say, because there were a lot of things even this morning that were brought up that not everybody probably realized where we've been and where we started. And especially, as some of you know, it's my 41st year, so.
Bob is a great volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We have been focused on developing a good stewardship plan this year in all areas. Tricia Benson in our back has employed it in direct mail, personal thank yous, and also in plan giving. Now that we have a better data management system, you are going to get triggered. Every chapter gets triggered if a $2,500 gift, and they have 3 ways they can thank that person. So we're working it through all levels of giving. And also Fran Kaya, who runs the annual fund program, has started stewardship letters. And so a couple of times a year, three times a year, we're sending out information to annual fund donors and not asking for anything, just giving them an update. So we're a little behind, but we're trying to catch up with you.
And we would like to invite our Tier 4 markets if you'd like to share anything or some comments.
Voluntold.
Voluntold, I like that.
Hi, I'm Susan Fitzgerald from the Lone Star chapter, and this is my husband, Jim. And we have a 35-year-old daughter with cystic fibrosis. So I've been doing this for a long time, being on the board, and I'll probably be doing it for a long time. But what we came up today was incorporating giving was, I think it starts at home at the chapter. I think it starts with your board. When we get together for our meetings, we don't get a lot of time to talk to them about it. You sit down, you have lunch, you go from one venue to the next, events, what's going on, how much do we have, how much have we planned, are we at our budget? That hour is gone, and then so is our board. So I think someone from volunteer leadership, which is probably me, goes back and educates the board. But I would like to have some tools to take back, where you can start with letter writing campaigns if they don't want to do that. We talked about fundraisers in the past that are no longer existing, like Golf Challenge. And it was good for 3 or 4 years, and it's no longer an event with your chapter. It could be any event. That those people now are out there walking. They're no longer giving. We've lost them in the chapter. And I think we need to make that reconnection or tap into that. One thing that I like is that I come from San Antonio. We have UT Health Science Center, we have Santa Rosa Hospital, and we also have the military for clinical sites. It's huge. We also have a transplant center. So educating our board members, taking them on a tour through the transplant center, showing them, reaching out, grabbing all that passion, and turning it into a fundraiser, with an annual fundraising dinner just for your board members. Bring a friend. Let's raise money. So those are just some new areas that I personally would like to explore with our chapter. I don't see them, I see them involved in events, but I don't see them involved in this way.
Thank you. And last but not least, do we have anybody from our major market that would like to share anything with the group? No, time for one, please. Who has the best comment? Triage.
Okay. Hello. I'm a newbie. My best friend's son was diagnosed at 10 days old, and he's 18 months old, and we focused on CF's finest and great strides, and I didn't understand what individual giving meant. I thought it was raising money funneled through an event. So just for anybody else who's a newbie, it's so interesting to figure out that it doesn't have to be just through an event. And Aaron, I'll be emailing you because I would love a sample of your verbiage of how you give the ask, because I'm still sitting here going, how do you ask for a major giving or a planned giving or the annual fund? And I don't necessarily understand it, because I have no problem asking for money for Grayton, and I'll get it. But outside of an event, I didn't understand. So I appreciate this experience as a first-timer.
Thank you. And that is a great reminder that our individual giving committee members, even those that are not here, their information is on the back of this handout. They are here for you to reach out to, ask questions, ask Erin for a sample of her thank you. They would be so happy to share that with you. And as a little plug for individual giving, it is one of the most efficient and effective ways to impact our mission. So thank you for all those who are involved in individual giving. And thank you for coming to this breakout group and for your interest. For those of you who are here, we strongly encourage you to fill out this card just to tell us you are here. Even if you don't have any questions or comments, we just want to know that you are here so we can just have some feedback about who was in this session. And for those of you who are online, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them on the back end of this session. So please fill out your question in the space provided. And last but not least, on behalf of myself, all of our panelists and IG committee and the entire department, we thank you so much for being here today. We strongly encourage you to take the next step, and we invite you to join our breakout session tomorrow for individual giving called Pitch Perfect, How to Tell and Sell Your CF Story, which Bob alluded to before. It'll help you craft that perfect story about how you approach your family, your community, other volunteers to tell your CF story. So thank you again.